Hey there. Welcome to the Gyro Step, a Milwaukee Bucks podcast. Not so much today. Part of the Blue Wire Podcast Network and GSPN, presented by our pals at Prize Picks. I say not much today because, listen, folks, it's September. Football's here. That's exciting. Download Prize Picks, code Eurostep, first deposit match. Get yourself some extra plays there. Not a lot going on in the basketball world. Could I talk about the Wisconsin Herd schedule release? I could. It's in Oshkosh. That part's exciting, but it doesn't take long. Not a full podcast. So instead, I've got Kyle Bandujo, my buddy, the author of the shortly coming out later this month, Movies with Balls, which is a book about sports movies. The full title, The Greatest Sports Films of All Time, Analyzed and Illustrated. Also the host of Big Screen Sports, the Sports Movies podcast. Really become the sports movies guy. Also my Blue Wire buddy and buddy before time working at Blue Wire together. Long intro, Kyle. How's it going?
It's going great, man. I'm excited to be here. I'm excited we get to do this. Is this the first time we've ever potted before? We've talked on a lot of Zoom calls. I don't know if we've done a podcast before.
I thought, did you not have me on, or was it just like a different Zoom call thing we did?
Honestly, I don't know. I'm gonna have to look back in the archives.
Yeah, we'll have to find a reason to do another one. Otherwise, I was gonna ask. It's obviously I didn't think it would make the cut here, and then when I read the criteria laid out in the book, which we'll go over, I knew it wouldn't. But have you done anything on any of the Giannis movies?
I've not done anything on any of the Giannis movies, and yeah, the book, everything had to be fictional, but have not touched the Giannis movies. But I always say like the tagline of the podcast now is all movies are sports movies, so pretty much all movies are on the table, but like every sports movie is absolutely on the table.
Yeah. So before we get into the book here, which I'm very excited to do, every time someone I know writes a book, I get so excited because being able to dig through the way that you present these things that, obviously a lot of people are going to be familiar with, or certainly listeners of this, sports podcast, I'm sure have seen a lot of these movies. And I want to talk later about the movies people haven't seen and kind of a whole discussion there. But how did you, baseball guy, general sports guy, living in Texas, a lot of sports going on. How did you happen to, it was first with big screen sports, and now, of course, movies with balls, become, like we were joking about it before we started recording, become the sports movie guy? Like, what about that particular niche drew you into, I could talk about this every week?
So I've always been into movies and pop culture, even from like a very young age. Like I was always a big sports fan, obviously, and like playing sports, but I was always into movies. Like more, everyone's generally into movies. Like anyone who says like I don't watch movies, probably a serial killer. But I was always like really into movies and like looking into the Oscars and things like that. And then being a sports fan, I just started watching sports movies in a way of kind of like, did they get this right? I got very into the minutia of, did this football scene make sense, or did this baseball scene make sense? And then kind of like a little while after college, I was freelancing for a website, like a post-grad humor website. And I wrote a piece about all the football problems and Remember the Titans, all the things that don't make sense. And that was the genesis of what became Big Screen Sports. It was initially a podcast just about like what sports movies get right and what sports movies get wrong. It has now turned into a celebration of movies, and also just like a ridiculous entity where we, talk about which character should be replaced with Air Bud and who was, other things like that. But we have a category of if this movie was a Dateline episode, what Keith Morrison would open that with. So yeah, but it started with talking about just the strict, this is what sports movies get right, this is what sports movies get wrong. And I still love doing that. I still love breaking down when a movie, now more so when a movie gets something right, it really fires me up. And sports movies are rarely like perfect, but when something comes out that feels really authentic, like I don't know if we've ever talked about the Sandler movie Hustle, the one that came out like a couple years ago. I loved that movie, and it just watching a lot of great basketball.
I love that movie like too. That. So I just found out. I just found what we can collab on. I thought Hustle was great. Really
Hustle is so good. I loved Hustle, and like a lot of sports movies, not just dive deep, but a lot of them the best ones come because the people creating them have a lot of passion for sports and aren't just trying to make a movie that's gonna like make money or be successful. Like Sandler with Hustle, Sandler with all his sports movies. He's got like 4 or 5 at this point. My favorite sports movie, Bull Durham. Ron Shelton played minor league baseball. He played college basketball. He's a big sports fan, which is why White Man Can't Jump and Tin Cup work. And then I always point to 61, which is the Roger Maris, Mickey Mantle. I think it was an HBO movie when it came out, but it's like known as a really good baseball movie. And it's successful because Billy Crystal absolutely loves the Yankees, and he directed that movie, and stuff like that comes through. So all that to say, I really just appreciate when a sports movie gets things right.
Yeah, I think we all do, and I think every niche does. I used to work for an airplane organization, and they were certainly that way. Anytime they showed flight in a movie, like, is this a real plane? Is this an impossible physics, right? Like that idea of like, if you're going to tackle our thing, get it right, especially if it's going to be a main focus of the movie. And I like that you didn't just include the movies that got it right in here. I was absolutely cracking up during the Teen Wolf section, the whole thing. And I didn't read most of the movies I haven't seen. So I don't think I've actually seen Teen Wolf in its entirety, but I know enough about it to where I was like, this is going to be good. I need to read this. I want to start there because the loose connection to this being a real Gyro Step. And if you're listening, you can't tell. It's not a normal Gyro Step. Kyle's got a book coming out. I'm very excited. I have no Bucks things to talk about, so we're just doing this instead. Rohan's still a world traveler, so I just hijacked the podcast. But we do have some Milwaukee/Wisconsin sports connections. So real deep one here. I think you referenced it being a Bucks game, the under the rim distraction in the Teen Wolf section. So do you want to talk generally about, and we won't obviously go through every movie. People need to buy the book, pre-order it now. Where's the best place to pre-order it? Is it the publisher site?
Amazon, wherever books are sold.
Okay.
Movies. It's kind of a celebration of the love of 26 of the greatest fictional movies ever. And the good thing, kind of like you said, Ty, you don't have to have seen every movie in this book. Each of the 26 movies gets its own section. So if you have 1 or 2 favorites, we dive into game breakdowns and we pick an MVP. We talk about if someone in the movie was good at their job. We ask them important questions. Did Rachel Phelps from Major League invent Moneyball? Yeah. What would Roy McAvoy from Tin Cup be doing, 20 years later? And what I can say is, since I had nothing to do with the illustrations or how it looks, that's all my creative partner, Rick Bryson, is it looks awesome.
Yeah,
truly, you don't even have to read it. Looks great on a bookshelf. Looks great on a coffee table. Makes a great gift. If you want to read the writing too, buyer beware. That's up to you. But we try to tackle these movies with appreciation and with a little bit of fun. I think Teen Wolf describes that perfectly, because Teen Wolf, the thing is, you don't really even have to see Teen Wolf. You just have to go on YouTube and search Teen Wolf Win in the End, which is essentially the full montage of their final game, which is one of the most ridiculous instances of movie basketball ever played.
Yeah, it may be one of the worst. I think the Bucks tie-in is the rival sits under the basket during the free throws. And you suggested the Bucks should have someone do that when I think it was Zion shooting free throws. And I was like, first off, I love the Zion versus the Milwaukee Bucks example. That's like a true pair that only a real sports or NBA fan would come up with. But second, just that idea I think is awesome. And it kind of reminded me, the Bulls almost did this with DeMar DeRozan's kid, DR, who was screaming, and the Raptors missed 5,000 free throws. I feel like this should be permissible, especially maybe only if you're a play-in team, it should be any rules. Go full semi-pro. I don't think there should be real rules. It's a silly game anyway. But yeah, I
fully agree.
Yeah.
It's funny. I wrote that section. I mean, the process of writing a book, it takes a long time. And there was editing and there was all the visuals and stuff. I wrote that section a long time ago, and I was debating which player to use. And I was like, Zion seems like a safe bet to be still relevant when this book is coming out or in a few years. And then the health started getting weird, and all the weight questions. And I was like, ooh, yikes! My should have probably swapped in someone else. But it seems like we're good. Seems like he's still going to be relevant.
So. I think relevant for sure. I mean, it's going to be there's discussions around him, but I think he's going to be in and around the league for a while, at least at this point. So yeah, I think it was a risk. Honestly, the funny thing is, could probably have gone LeBron, would still probably be relevant somehow for 5 more years, which is crazy. But
he might play longer than Zion.
He seriously might. I think the main one though, and the one I was looking forward to the most, and you did shout him out in the section as a UCLA legend, but still is in The White Man Can't Jump, which is a fantastic movie. And I think Marques Johnson, current Bucks color commentator, Bucks legend, just got his number retired a few years ago. They waited too long, frankly, but they finally did it. And of course, just like really Renaissance man. I mean, certainly has some other acting credits as well, but this is definitely his most famous as Raymond, who's gonna go get his gun. How hard was it in that movie? I guess really for White Man Can't Jump and for just like all the movies to know which parts need to be shouted out. Because like from my perspective as someone who's locked in on the Bucks and all Wisconsin stuff, right? Whenever you're from somewhere that's not like New York, and you see your place shouted out or something takes place there, it's like, oh yeah, let's go. Like they said Milwaukee, they said Wisconsin. It's great. And so, always on the lookout for things like that or just like a Marques Johnson sighting in general. But like, why does Raymond need to be in the book? Or how hard were some of these decisions of like, oh, I want to shout out this, and this, but we only have so much for like the general plot overview or like best scenes or your rundown. How do I do this? I know you had different sections you can incorporate too, but what was that process like in terms of for each movie, what needs to be stated?
Yeah, so with each movie, the general structure was like opening with like, this is the movie. And then most sports movies are centered around one final game. So we do like a breakdown, what's the setup for the game, and then kind of a big breakdown of that game, like the final, the 18-hole match in Caddyshack, or like in Major League, the final game against the Yankees. Like a lot of sports movies build to that. The ones that don't, like White Man Can't Jump, which is kind of jumps around. The toughest one was figuring out the Sandlot, because the Sandlot, they have the one game against the team, but that's not really like what they're building towards. And I ended up deciding to write around the 4th of July game, which I think is like a really special scene. With White Man Can't Jump, everything, I was like watching it when I was writing the book, I was watching these movies like a coach crunching film. Just I would watch scenes over and over again. I would watch the movies over and over again. And while I was writing about them, I would watch them just because like I'm trying to pull things. And with White Man Can't Jump, I was like, man, there's something you could write solely about the first scene when Billy pulls his initial hustle, on Sydney, or you could write about Raymond going to get his gun, or you could write about them playing in the tournament or something like that. And with White Man Can't Jump, I kind of took almost a cheat code, and I wrote about every instance, like a shorter blurb about every instance of basketball and like what sticks out, because that movie is about their travels and the up and down and bonding as quote unquote teammates / kind of frenemies at certain points of that movie. And so I felt like there was something to pull out of every scene in that they play basketball that like tells you a bigger story about the movie and why it's beloved. Like Marques Johnson, like Raymond going to get his gun it technically is not a basketball move, but it is one of the best parts of that movie.
Yeah.
It was when the guy at the counter of the bodega or whatever like recognizes him.
Right.
So yeah, in that regard, some movies were easy. A lot of them build up to one game. And then once like White Man Can't Jump, The Sandlot, it was a little more challenging of figuring out, okay, what exactly are we going to frame this around? But I like the way it turned out. I'm glad it gave me a chance to shout out more things in White Man Can't Jump.
Yeah, I think that's probably better than trying to just do, a whole section about a game that maybe isn't traditionally like the final game or anything. I thought, before we get back to my other Milwaukee thing, the Sandlot one was really good, that section, because, and I thought this was one of my favorite parts about the book that, your writing and the illustrations kind of came together on, is that, the Teen Wolf section is like written with like, here's a ludicrous movie, let's laugh about it. Like the Sandlot and Angels in the Outfield ones. Maybe it's just you and baseball now that I think about it. But those ones where it's more of like a, Sandlot's funny, of course, Smalls and everything. But like it's like, the nostalgia and everything. I felt like it was really captured. I'm reading through it about like, you never know it's your last time out there with the boys playing your last game. And I was like, man, I had to take a break for a second and compose myself. Was it difficult for you? And maybe this is a question too for like the editing process and stuff that maybe is beyond you, but like to pulled together a lot of very different like thematic movies. I mean, they're all sports movies, but you know, Sandlot is a pretty stark difference from Hot Rod, which is a pretty stark difference from Creed and stuff like that. And in that sense, like what was it like kind of going from one to the other? And did you write them like when you wrote it, actually like physically putting it down? Did you order them thematically, or was it kind of more just like random, or just like an order of your favorites?
The writing was scattershot. The first one I did was Bull Durham because it's always been my favorite. It's kind of when we initially did the book pitch, that was the first thing, and there were a couple of variations of that. Yeah, it's funny you asked that because I had this concern for a lot of while I was writing it of keeping some kind of same tone and being like, these are going to be different because I'm writing them at different times. Some of them I wrote, from Bull Durham to whatever. I can't remember what exactly was last, but that might have been a year apart because Bull Durham was done so early. And I was worried about that exact thing, like keeping some certain tone during the book. And then I kind of, at a midway point, kind of figured like, it's best to go with the tone of the movie, like go with what the movie's giving you. Like Teen Wolf isn't asking you to take it seriously, so this should be more lighthearted and fun. With Sandlot, it was more of a thing of especially around the time I was writing it, like I had just shared the movie with my son for the first time, and really dove into like the nostalgia of childhood aspect. And then with others, I just tried to just kind of jumped around as to what, once we nailed down the 26 that we're going to be in, it was kind of like, sometimes it was like, well, I'm watching this movie anyway, like it's coming on. Why don't I make this, these are going to be the week or couple weeks that I try to knock this specific movie out. And then others, it was like, all right, it's time to, let's work on A Knight's Tale and let's dive into that. And a lot of, to Rick, my creative partner, who is just truly the most creative person, but also the constant tinkerer. Like I would wake up so many mornings with like a cool visual or a cool idea or something from Rick. He's like, hey, I was working on this. What do you think? And so if like Rick sent me over some stuff on A Knight's Tale, I'd be like, this is now what I'm doing. I'm going to throw on A Knight's Tale and I'm going to write this out, because he's like, if anyone who checks out the book, there like examples on my Twitter and social media, and even I think on the Amazon store of like the play maps he did and all the cool little visuals and things. Like they truly make the book. Like he did a play map of a specific play or a specific thing for each movie, and so working off that a lot was help too. It was kind of like that. If he sent me a really cool idea, then it's like, okay, that movie is what's being what I'm going to work on now.
Yeah, and then I also wanted to add, well, let's do so the other big Milwaukee one, of course. And I love that you, I think properly credited Bob Uecker in Major League as the greatest sports movie announcer of all time, which I think
the best.
I think is 100% true. I also love at the end of The Sandlot, the hypothetical of like, did Vince Scully get replaced here in this universe? Because is Benny the Jet have that much pull? I never thought about that before, and I was like, that's a great question. They should have maybe just thought of any other team, or made it clear he was TV. That might have ruined it too. Anyway, Uecker obviously is so just a bit outside and everything else in Major League. Did you feel like at any point were you like, am I putting too many bases? I don't think there is, to be clear, but I feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like sports wise, baseball maybe comes first for you. Did you feel like you had to fight a bias there? Like, did you, I could see, this is how I could see it happening if I were you, of like, I can't do too many baseball. Then you look at it and it's like, only 2 of the 26 are baseball. I think I fought too hard against myself. Was that a part of your mindset at all? Or were you like, no, there's a lot of classic baseball movies, maybe more than any other sport, honestly. I'm just going to embrace it.
No, you're right on. I had to definitely fight. Well, because baseball movies and boxing movies are kind of like, they will continue to make those for eons and eons. There's so many of them, and there's so many good ones. So when we put the initial list together, there were movies that were always going to be in there. And a lot of those movies that were always going to be in there were baseball movies. I say it's funny you mentioned Bob Uecker. Major League was actually kind of a maybe for us. We both love it, but we had a lot of baseball movies. It's not based on a true story, but it is real teams. We had to start kind of thinking about copyrights and things like that. But it became like we couldn't leave it out. But yeah, there was a conscious effort, especially wanting to include something from a lot of different sports, and there are a lot more sports that are underrepresented. Like soccer is severely there's just not much there. We were able to include Bend It Like Beckham and She's the Man, which coincidentally are the only two female driven sports movies that we were able to include. There's not a lot there, and not doing stuff based on a true story. We weren't able to include For Love of the Game or A League of Their Own, which is one of my favorites. But yeah, how many baseball movies there were was definitely definitely top of mind, and it led, I left some things I loved on the cutting room floor. But there's, if I don't know it off the top of my head, but I would almost 100% guess that baseball is probably the most represented in the book by 2+ movies.
Well, yeah, and I think, outside of just like what you're into, I think it's impossible to debate that like baseball has the most classic. It's been around the longest, and I think for whatever reason, I think format-wise, it makes for a good movie. I think it's maybe easier to do well, to fudge it. Like basketball, you can just tell there's not that many breaks in the action outside of timeouts. You can tell very quickly. Baseball, I think you can maybe do a little bit more magic to hide it. You mentioned
most of the best. I will say most of the best basketball movies have been when the production team has just rolled the basketball out in the middle of the court with a bunch of great players and said, "Get us some B-roll."
Yeah,
and that's what, like Blue Chips. Yeah. Coach Carter was a lot like that. They did a lot of like pickup hustle. Obviously, it's like, hey, we've got incredible players. Like just let them cook.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's much easier to make because baseball's stagnant. There's more stoppages. It's easier to just focus on one person. Same with boxing and combat sports. That's no different than, scripting an action movie.
Right.
Like an action movie brawl scene. But like, obviously things like basketball, football, golf, much more difficult.
Yeah. You mentioned accidentally For the Love of the Game. Is that, and it's another Costner, and I noticed this, like we talked, I think before the record, no, it was on the Hustle, Sandler. Did you not want to, were you like, okay, I can't have 8 Costner movies in here? Because Costner has so many great sports movies, and same with Sandler. Like, was that also part of the determining process of like, okay, I probably shouldn't do a third of the book is like the Kevin Costner wing of my book right here? There
was kind of a thought of that, but also For Love of the Game, I think the baseball aspect is really awesome. I think the Kelly Preston love story aspect, basically everything outside of Yankee Stadium is really poor. Yeah. And so that for me kind of made it a good one. The one that was actually kind of tough, I don't think it got close to getting in, but we at least talked about it, was Draft Day, because it's the only movie of its kind. It's not altogether good. I always credit a guy I had on my podcast, Kevin Turner, who does a lot of like Cowboys draft and radio stuff and things like that. He said, this movie's not good, but I was never not entertained. And I think that describes Draft Day perfectly. It's extremely entertaining. It's also like objectively bad. So that was the Costner movie that like we thought about. I don't think we ever seriously thought about it, but if we were going to include another, it might be that, just because it brings in something else that's unique. I really like I don't know if you saw the cross country movie he did, McFarland USA, where he's like a coach. It's a Disney
loves sports, man.
It's a Disney movie.
Sports.
You know exactly how the movie's going to go from the second it starts. Like you could name most of the plot beats, just about what it's about. It's still really, really delightful. Like just a really enjoyable movie, but there's not as much to chew on there. So I felt good with doing the big trio of Bull Durham, Field of Dreams, and Tin Cup, which I think are like the top 3 Costner sports movies.
Did you was there anything that came out too late? Like I think Hustle would have been out on time, but obviously the writing process takes so long. And you mentioned like there were some switch ups during the process, but I'm sure you want to have a pretty good idea. Was there anything where you're like, oh, I wish this movie came out 1 year ago and it probably would have been in, or maybe not? I'm trying to remember if there's been any like great sports movie in the last year and a half. I feel like nothing essential, but I would love to hear your thoughts.
Nothing essential. I think Hustle came out during the process, and if maybe we were writing this book in 2030, it might have been. And we did want to make sure that part of the consideration was some of the greatest of all time. So movies with staying power.
Right.
A lot of these are older. A lot of these are 70s, 80s, 90s.
Yeah, is the newest movie Creed?
Newest movie is Creed. Creed might be the only movie. It's definitely the only movie in the 2010s, I think. So that cutoff right there left off. Like I always point to Everybody Wants Some. That was 2017. That was really underseen. A lot of the time, the chopping block was like commercial appeal.
Yeah.
So the 2010s movies that got cut off were Everybody Wants Some, and then Warrior, which is one of my favorite movies of all time. But like
that one made that one made the near misses. I don't
made
know
the bench.
Yes, the bench. Sorry, that's
because Rick made a great ticket for that.
Yeah,
I will say I don't think I've mentioned every movie. The genesis of the idea was Rick creating these tickets from sports movies. And really so every movie has like a ticket of what the ticket would have looked like. And so we have a bench section at the end, which features things like Bloodsport and Warrior and The Longest Yard of some of
Cannonball
these tickets.
Run. Yeah.
I bet Rick probably has like 50 of those that aren't in the book. He, again, the consummate like creative, the consummate tinkerer. So there's a lot of content there. But yeah, the cutoff was more it had to be something that we knew had staying power, and then a tiebreaker of like commercial appeal.
Yeah. Speaking quickly about staying power and commercial appeal, I just want to take a quick minute to talk about our friends at Prize Picks, America's #1 daily fantasy sports app, where all you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. I feel good about this one. 1 Caleb Williams passing yard gets you 1 win on Prize Picks every week in September. Folks, as I mentioned earlier, it's September. Football is back. It's time to dive in on Prize Picks. I've been taking some basketball L's lately. I'm excited for football to turn that around. Starting today, actually. We're back in action today as we record this on Thursday morning. So join me and win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. The best way to get action on sports in most states, including California, Georgia, Texas, where Kyle's based, and Wisconsin, of course, where I am based. And a lot of our listeners are based. And thankfully, withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. You can get your money, in as little as 15 minutes when your picks hit. So I am looking today. I mean, Caleb Williams, I'm obviously going to include that. That's easy. I like Patrick Mahomes passing yards. I think I'm going to do Isaiah Pacheco touchdown. I think he's going to see the end zone. I think it's 0.5 on rushing or receiving. I like Pacheco a lot, so I think I'm going to do that. You can get
someone's got to score those Chiefs touchdowns. I think the best thing about daily fantasy and Prize Picks, like the thing that I've learned to love, is especially like it's the best for when if you finished your fantasy draft like I did in a couple leagues, and I was like, I'm not like thrilled with how this went. I don't feel optimistic about my team, and especially early in the season, it's too early to like hit the waiver wire and really make a lot of changes. So if you're feeling not so optimistic about your fantasy team, it's good. You have full control with Prize Picks. You're not worried about someone taking your picks. Yeah. And it just makes football more fun.
It does. And sometimes I've doubled up too. So I think I have Pacheco in our Blue Wire League. I might say, please, buddy, you're going to ruin my Thursday otherwise, but I'm willing to risk it, I believe. You all listeners can do the same. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code Eurostep. Get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code Eurostep on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game. Okay, we need to talk about, but I want to keep talking about the bench or the second string section. So you mentioned one movie on there, which was Warrior, which I need to watch still. And I want to have a general conversation about that as well. Semi-Pro was on here. How close, and it was the first one you list. How close was Semi-Pro? Because I think that is one of the funniest sports movies I've ever seen.
I would agree. We felt like we couldn't include two of the... Will Ferrell has that sports movie trio of Talladega Nights, Semi-Pro, and Blades of Glory. Blades of Glory is an easy cut for me. I'm not the biggest Blades of Glory person. I love Talladega Nights and Semi-Pro. So we felt like we couldn't include both. And in making the, kind of like juggling those, Talladega Nights would give us one more motorsports movie. It'd be something to pair with Days of Thunder. I think it was more commercially successful. It certainly like
Yeah,
lasted a little longer. I think it's a little more well regarded, even though I think semi pro is now underrated.
I
I think
agree.
it's not as, but the thing is, semi pro does worse on cable because a lot of stuff gets cut, a
Yeah.
lot of funny stuff. Talladega Nights, a lot of the humor still comes through as on cable. It's a really fun commentary of living in the South. Rick and I both live in the South. He's in South Carolina. I'm in Texas. Uh, so Talladega Nights became the pick. It just became more of like,
Yeah.
you know, if we had 40 movies, it probably gets in. At 26, it was on the outside looking in.
I think Talladega Nights is better, even though I love basketball. I think it's more quotable. I think some of the reasons Semi Pro wasn't more successful is people don't get that a lot of the bits are actually really funny, like loose balls, ABA kind of jokes. Like I think people just think, oh, this is just like, classic Farrell movie. It's all way out there. It's ridiculous. It's not that far off. I think that actually, if you've read you or the listener, Loose Balls, which is like basically the story of the ABA told by people who were there. I mean, it was crazy. It was flying by like dangerous promos, player safety, all these stuff. It's a really good movie, and Andre 3000 is just really, really good. That's always what I take away when I watch it is like, man, Andre 3000, I wish you were in the public more because I think he's phenomenal in that movie.
He's off. He's playing his flute now. You
Yeah,
gotta
he's doing his thing.
catch him playing his flute. Yeah, it's got Woody Harrelson. Woody Harrelson is a sneaky sports movie Hall of Famer.
Yeah,
I detail that out in the book, but he's like the second or third lead in Semi Pro. He's one of the two leads in White Man Can't Jump. He is the lead in Kingpin, which is also in the book. Kingpin is one of my absolute favorites. I feel like it's the first time I've mentioned it when doing this little like promo Blitz tour, but
yeah.
Kingpin to me is one of the funniest movies of all time. It's just absolutely incredible. So all love to Woody Harrelson, who is by all accounts a very good athlete. Like
Yeah, he must be.
was the better basketball player in White Man Can't Jump, and then as semi pro still looks good. It's weird. Woody Harrelson to me blows my mind because he's done some crazy serious performances like Natural Born Killers, and then he's done comedies like Kingpin, and he everything in between. And then on the interview circuit, it's like this guy is just on Mars.
Yeah.
It's amazing to know that he can be the same guy in True Detective as I think my favorite Woody Harrelson moment ever is an interview. I think actually was with our guy CVV with Chris Van
Oh
Vliet.
yeah.
He's interviewing Woody Harrelson and Liam Hemsworth before the Hunger Games, and CVV references that like Liam Hemsworth's brother has a movie coming out like Thor or whatever, and Woody Harrelson has this like light bulb moment. He's like, I never realized that was your brother. It's the most incredible interview moment, and all credit to CVV for being the one to make that happen.
That's awesome. Yeah, shout out to CVV. Harrelson, yeah, has really been all over. But I think to hold up as I guess it must just be a true hooper like Sandler. I mean, he looked good in two different and very different timing basketball movies. Speaking of basketball movies, Space Jam, not in here anywhere. Was that easy for you? It's obviously got the critical acclaim, and I want to ask also, does it make it harder or weird when there's either a remake or like a distant sequel? Like you mentioned, I think tastefully, the White Men Can't Jump reboot, which I have not seen. I don't know if I will bother seeing. But like Space Jam, obviously, you just had Space Jam 2 come out, and I think it was worse. But Space Jam 1 was not exactly a wonderful movie in a lot of senses. Like, what was the thought or the reason to not include Space Jam?
It was kind of on the fringe, just its relevancy. Obviously, like I grew up with it. You grew up with it.
Yeah.
We've both probably seen Space Jam like 20 times. There was a thought. It's more, I think the best content ever done about Space Jam is I think it was Yahoo or someone did like a mock 30, like a 5 to 10 minute 30 for 30 on if Space Jam was real. And I think like that for me is you can't do Space Jam better than that little segment.
Yeah.
And so it kind of went into that of how much could Space Jam has also been so heavily covered and heavily talked about, and the Monstars, the secret sauce, all that, or secret stuff. So thought about it. Also with like the Looney Tunes, and we were worried about with copyrights like Disney, and then incorporating the Looney Tunes. I
Right.
don't know like the
Okay.
partnership company, but heavily copyrighted. So that
Yeah.
was one
Yeah.
thing we were like, don't know how much we can use that.
Yeah. Which makes it a lot tougher. That's an interesting idea of like, maybe there's just nothing left to say. I think Space Jam is maybe almost unique in that. I think a lot, like obviously a lot of people have written about the Sandlot, but kind of differently than this like blog era, wackadoo coverage that Space Jam, every outlet, every blog, every YouTube has done something on Space Jam. Was there anything else that didn't get included for that reason of like, it's fun, it's quirky, everyone has already explored it. I don't know if there's enough left for us, or I don't know if it's, on top of it, maybe just not being good enough or the right fit either.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of, because we picked so many, we went for like notable movies. A lot of them
Yeah.
have had coverage in some form or fashion. It'd be more like it'd be the tiebreaker of it not getting in over something else. So like pretty most everything we've done in here has some sort of great coverage around it in some form or fashion, some less than others. Like I don't think there's been enough written about Knight's Tale, which is a Knight's Tale, which is a very important movie for our generation. It was on TNT all the time, and
Yeah.
young Heath Ledger, and still a lot of fun. At the time we wrote it, there wasn't a dodgeball oral history. One came out this year from I want to on the Ringer. I think it's Jake Kring Stripe. I'm butchering his name, but it's
Yeah.
it's an oral history of dodgeball.
That's actually surprising because that is also a cable classic.
Yeah, and the oral history is incredible. It's an incredible story, so I encourage everyone to go check that out. But yeah, so some movies have been dove deep on more than others, but it for a lot of them is like, let's put our spin on this, and again, it's more of an appreciation of love versus the conscious decision we made that we had to really think about. Do we want to make this like a research movie or tell people things they don't know, or try to do that? And I felt like with 8 to 10 pages a movie, only half of that, or a little over half, being actual written content, it wouldn't be like diving as deep on these movies as they deserve to be like a true like an oral history or like something. So it was more an appreciation and analyzing them versus here's something you didn't know about the making of Dodgeball, which you can get from that great Ringer oral history.
Yeah, I think, and to make it clear for folks before they read the book, which should be coming in the mail in a couple of weeks, everyone I hope is pre-ordered by now. If not, go do it. It's not like a, here is the cinematography, or here's what it was like on set, or this director's life. It's like, let's talk about the movie, which I think is easy to appreciate. It makes it that like great book to have on a coffee table, or, is this disrespectful if I say this would be a great bathroom read? Is that disrespectful to you?
No, that's all I want in the world.
Yeah.
Read this while you're taking a dump. Like
it would be really
get
good
the red marks on your thighs. Like it's a great, it truly is a great like pick up and put down. Again, like someone comes over your house, they pick it up off their coffee table, they like Happy Gilmore. Boom. Because not everyone is going to have seen all 26 movies in this. So it is a great pick up and put down. It's a good jump around. And like, I find that like my attention span works like that now. I will say like credit to one of my favorite books, Movies and Other Things, Shea Serrano's book, like illustrated movie book, which is a huge inspiration for us personally. That is one I read it all the way through the first time, but I will sometimes, like if I'm just killing time or whatever, need to like clear my head, read something, whatever, I will go to a random chapter and dive into that. So we wanted the book to be like that. They're in an order, but it's not a specific order you need to read these in. They're not in the order they were written in. They're just there. So like if you want to, I can't remember what the last movie in the book might actually be Creed. I can't remember. It's like Creeders. It's Creed. Yeah. So Creed, if you want to start with Creed, the last chapter, start with Creed. If you want to go to Slapshot, you want to Dodgeball, like it's whatever you want it to be. It is not a book that needs to be read in one sitting or you won't understand it. It's definitely in pockets.
Yeah, which I think is such a fun book to flip through for that reason. We're going to save Creed for the end here too. Well, one more, Air Bud. I think Air Bud is mentioned a couple times, and you mentioned it too. I almost feel like the issue with Air Bud could be like, which Air Bud do you even talk about? Which you kind of had to navigate with the Rocky/Creed franchise. But why no Air Bud for people who may be wondering?
Air Bud, I think the joke of the dog playing basketball is more than the sum of like the actual movie and what there is. Because the whole thing to talk about Air Bud is like, it's a dog playing basketball. It's a dog playing football. It's a dog playing soccer. That's the funny thing. So it's more when we do that category in our podcast of which character should be Air Bud. It's more like, what would it be funny if Air Bud is doing? And I tend to gravitate, especially when we do like not an actual sports movie, when we do like a like when we did Die Hard, it's like, what if Air Bud is Hans Gruber?
That's the best one right away. With that hair too. 100%.
Yeah, perfect. So yeah, there's just not enough there in Air Bud. But it's, the joke of Air Bud itself and the dog doing those sports is enough, I think.
Did you know that going in, or did you try to do Air Bud and you're like, it's just a dog playing? Is basketball the first one? Like, there's nothing more.
I think basketball is the first one.
Yeah,
I think because that's Air Bud, so it's like that's why. Then it's like Air Bud Golden Retriever or Golden Receiver or something like that. And then it gets into all of them. I don't think Air Bud was ever in consideration. So Rick is Rick is like an older generation than me. Okay. And so Air Bud was not like Rick's prime time is like 80s movies, like loves, like Teen Wolf was always going in. Yeah. He was there for it, loved it. Air Bud was something that was not, he didn't have any nostalgia for it. His kids were born after Air Bud came out. So it's not like he had watched them. So Air Bud never, it's just, Air Bud is best in references.
Yeah. And I'm not caping for Air Bud. I wasn't even a big Air Bud kid either. I feel like
I don't think I was a big Air Bud kid either.
I mean, it's like, it's cool the dog plays. I don't know. Are there people out there who are like, I hope they make another one? I need Air Bud in every sport. Put Air Bud.
I think it's so. I think it's just a bit. I think anyone who's caping for Air Bud it's a bit.
I hope so. But they keep, I shouldn't say they kept making the movies. I think it's been quite a while. But now, you know what? We're probably getting to the point where they're going to be like, all right, we have no IP we haven't done. Let's run back Air Bud. But now it's, if it was Air Bud, it was a Maltese like My Little Sophie, I'd watch it. I might go to theaters for that.
Gritty Air Bud reboot.
Yeah, oh God. Yeah. The style of like the DC cinematic universe.
Yeah, it's just everything.
Air Bud using anabolic steroids.
I would probably watch that, honestly. Yeah. I would be more interested in that than I would just like a traditional Air Bud reboot.
Yeah. I don't know if I could do it. They did didn't they do like a Winnie the Pooh horror movie? I don't think I couldn't do it.
They did. I think Winnie the Pooh has reached public domain, and so they did some sort of like weird thing. I think they were talking about Mickey Mouse has reached public domain, and so they've talked about doing that too. And like, I'm out on that.
I don't need that. I'm
not interested.
Okay, I want to talk about Rocky/Creed. First off, I thought it was fascinating you did Rocky 4 and Creed were 2 of the 26, and then the original Rocky got a shout out in the bench. Not for what I'm right on the section. What is it? The second string. That's what the thing is on the book. I think that's the universally right decision. I think the original Rocky is at best the third of the original Rocky movies. I like that you trashed, was it Rocky Balboa and Rocky 5? I think are 5 and 6.
Rocky 5, bad. Rocky Balboa, better than Rocky 5, but still not good.
Bad. Yeah, still clearly the 5th best of the movies. Tommy Gunn was horrible and all. So I got into Rocky super late. I got into Rocky, I think after I saw Creed. I went and got the Rocky box set and watched them all. And Rocky 1 holds up, but after you've seen the others, especially Creed, but even the other Rocky, very boring movie.
Really slow. Like
really, it's really just a lot of like, this is what Rocky does every day.
Yeah,
really not a romantic guy, but he tries to be.
Pacing of movies in the 70s was just different. Just different than what we have now. So if Rocky was made now, it'd be a different movie. But it's slow. It obviously kickstarted the whole thing. But in terms of, yeah, we decided we only wanted to pick one Rocky because we only get 26 movies if we have
Right.
multiple Rockies. Four had the most to chew on. It's the most bombastic, the 80s-ness of it, the whole Rocky ends the Cold War kind of thing. Like that was
So
an easy
funny.
choice. And then including Creed, just because I think, in terms of like best sports movies of the last 15 years, it's probably at the top, if not, the top three of that list. So
Yeah.
I think I mentioned in the intro, like we chose Creed because Creed rules or something
Yeah.
like that. But
Yeah.
choosing one Rocky was easy. I would say if it wasn't four, probably would have been one just because it was the original. But I also like three more than one.
Yeah, I do too. I think I even like two more than one, even though it gets a little long. I think it's a maybe. Well, again, it's like how do you weigh what? Obviously, one it doesn't exist without one. I think two is probably a little more entertaining. I think three is very good and probably gets lost. And I like that you paid it a lot of credit, I think, in the Rocky IV section and like shouting out Clubber, talking about the different villains.
Yeah,
One thing
I think he's legitimately the most terrifying person Rocky boxes. Like Drago's like a cartoon. Clubber Lang is legit terrifying.
I think if you're really in the lore of it, I think Drago wins because he did kill a guy. But I think Clubber as a persona is better because they didn't really let Drago do anything, right? Like he kind of just is like, the super Soviet, but that's really his whole thing. Like
he's just a blank nothing burger.
Yeah. It's just Dolph, just a big Dolph, right? That's the whole character.
That's exactly it.
And Clubber is like, this audacious, like out of the ring, like talking to Adrian and everything. And yeah, he's a better character, even though he probably had less screen time than Drago. They just didn't let Drago do anything with his.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Clubber, really incredible Mr. T performance.
I mean, maybe his best
outrageous
work. I mean, the A-Team as a whole, I guess you could say, but that is like just really, really good Mr. T.
Or the 1-800-COLLECT commercials.
Oh, yeah. It's one of those. I can't write that off. The one thing I loved about the book, to like pay tribute to other parts of movies that didn't fit either in the sports section or just generally, like I've got the Rocky IV part up and the robot is just pictured. And I don't think you write about it at all because, again, it has nothing to do with the sport of it. Such a weird, random, and funny part of that movie that I really I've never read why that's in it. Like Sylvester Stallone must have just like really wanted a robot, like thought it was really cool. I don't know. It aged horribly. The robot looks so dumb now, but I love that the robot gets included as like one of the funniest, most inexplicable parts of Rocky IV.
In a movie that is really 1980s, that is the most 1980s part.
Yeah,
like here's 100%. The robot. This is what they thought the future would be like.
Yeah.
With
if you're
AI.
really rich, you're gonna have this big bulky robot that doesn't really do anything.
Can't get upstairs. Like you live in a mansion. Like is only it's not great.
And then just on the ticket note, the one of my favorites in here was the Rocky IV because it's like the Soviet style ticket. I thought Rick did a great job of like. And you could tell there's like little write-ups on them too that kind of describe it. So it's like, this is based on these kind of real tickets. A lot of them are signed, or maybe all of them are signed by someone in the movie. I think the ticket aspect of it alone, it's so fun to just scroll through either before or after reading it and just be like, oh, wow, that is a cool looking ticket right there.
Yeah, Rick did a ton of research to make these tickets look authentic and be what they would have been if they had been a ticket of that era, all the way down to A Knight's Tale. He kind of looked into what would parchment have looked like in the Middle Ages and things like that. So yeah, Rick did an incredible job with all the tickets. Like he sent me the Bull Durham one as kind of like a memento that I have in my office.
Oh, that's cool.
So he did incredible work.
And then on that note, finally, we can talk about Creed, which I've been waiting to do. I love that in the Creed section, he snuck in the Bianca live in concert ticket at Johnny Brenda's because, again, like there wasn't really much room to talk about that story. And a lot of these, right, it's like it's about the sports of it. That's the crux, not the other storylines from the movies. But it's got that one in there. To kick off Creed, or not to kick off, but it's in there, signed by, I think, Rocky and Adonis. But, how fun was it to know you kind of had coverage on, things you couldn't talk about? Or was that like a process, or did you just see it later? Or because I think it's really neat to be able to, like, if you've seen the movies, I think it adds that extra layer of like, being swallowed up in the book and that extra, like, pulling in part of it.
Yeah, we worked in unison when we were doing that stuff, and sometimes it would be, "Hey, I wrote this thing. What do you think about a visual around it?" Sometimes Rick would say, "Hey, here's a visual. Here's something I created." But having that mix of, if I'm not mentioning this in the writing, here's the visuals are a great way to get these little extra parts of the movie. Like in Days of Thunder, he did a little visual of like Harry Hogg's Moonshine, which is just kind of a reference in the movie, and things like that. Again, like Rick just went through and dove in these movies and thought like, what would be interesting and unique to create, and what can we bring life to, and I think he did an incredible job of that. So yeah, like including that in Creed, and there's something in most of the movies where it's just like, if you've seen the movie, if you like the movie, you'll really enjoy the reference or
Yeah.
whatever it is. Like in Major League, we have Dorn's piss stain contract,
Yeah.
which is one of my favorites. So there's something that if I couldn't, I'm writing 5 or 6 pages max on a 2-hour movie. There's a lot of like fun things that people love about this movie that I can't include, and so fortunately Rick was able to like cover the slack there and really bring in a lot of cool things.
100%. Creed the movie, I think it's fitting. I think it is one of the great recent sports, and recent can go back a while. I mean, I think since like the 2000s to maybe early 2010s comedies that are pretty well represented here, it's like this Hustle. I feel like it's become, for whatever reason, like a more scarce genre. And I guess people would say the new Space Jam, like, right? Or A White Man Can't Jump. Like, I don't know. I think they're kind of soulless remakes to a certain extent, but in terms of like true. I mean, I guess Creed is also existing IP, but I think having Sly in it and so crucial in it is why it was able to be such a good torch pass. And I really think, and people who have been following me for a long time know this, I think is a perfect movie. The poster's been up behind me. People have probably seen it. They're watching on YouTube. I thought, and Michael B. Jordan, I think, is someone, there's like this, oh, he's corny, whatever else. I think Michael B. Jordan is awesome. I think he is a true movie star in this era. And I think like Creed is just perfect. So I was so glad Creed was in here. What is your favorite part from Creed? People who read it may already know, or may know when they read it. I think it comes across a little bit, but maybe not. What is your favorite part of Creed?
It's really a tie, and there are two different parts. There's the part at the end before the last round where he begs Rocky not to call the fight, and Rocky gives him the pump up speech, ends it with, "You're a Creed kid and I love you," and then Coogler's been holding back the Rocky music the entire movie, and then uses it right as he gets up. I love that. And then the fight, the 2-round fight, the single single shot is to me the best boxing scene ever filmed. The kind of the middle round, and it threw me back in my couch when I watched Creed for the first time, because I didn't see it in theaters, and so it's kind of a tie between those two moments.
I got to see it in theaters. I think I cried like 3 times the first time I watched it.
I wish I would have. It's a huge regret of my life not seeing
it. And I had no idea. Like, again, I wasn't even that into it. It was honestly serendipitous. Like, me and one of my college buddies, Evan, were just like going to a lot of $5 movies when they had that promo, like Tuesdays and Thursdays, I think, for college students.
Man,
and we're just like, yeah. I know, yeah. We'll go to Creed. Why not? And we'll see it. I fell asleep during Doctor Strange, which I regret. I rewatched it and I must have just been tired. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. I did not fall asleep during Creed. I would say the ones you mentioned, really almost every scene in the movie, I think it benefits from, I rewatch Creed. I think there's almost nothing where I'm like, oh, this didn't have to be in the movie, which is, I don't want to say rare, but a lot of these movies, I think I get to a part where I'm like, they could probably condense this. I think Creed, Coogler does such a good job in like not wasting a single thing. It's all tied together so well. I think Bianca is allowed to be a much more interesting character than Adrian ever was. Maybe that's just an era thing.
Sure.
But that helps a lot.
Is a tough hang.
It's
very
bad,
tough
dude.
hang.
It's bad. I mean, Adrian has some great scenes over the franchise, but I think they don't hit the same because they kind of just like wheel her out for them for the most part. They're just like, okay, you need to be the dramatic foil. But it's like, what do we know about Adrian? Like, it's just, she's just kind of there in a lot of the movies, which again, I'm not blaming the actress. I just think is a different kind of filmmaking.
Well, it's weird because right at the same time as Rocky comes out, Talia Shire is in The Godfather and has some like the fights with her husband and has like can get there at a certain level and can bring a lot more than she's allowed to bring as Adrian, where like you're you're just like, is she okay? Is she
Yeah,
all
she's like
is
so
is Rocky
withdrawn.
preying on someone who
Right.
doesn't have like the mental capacity to understand what he's doing?
Yeah.
It's yeah. So all that to say, yeah, Creed does a much better job with the romantic interest.
Yeah, and I think the fact that they made the music actually good and it like was such a good framing for the movie helped a lot too. But for whatever reason, the "I'm fighting pretty Ricky Conlon" always lives rent free. Like that soundbite, it's such a good like the excited nerves I think are really well captured. I agree that every fight is great in the movie. Like even the first one to show you he's good when he's down in Mexico, I think is really good. The middle fight against Leo, which I think you wrote about quite a bit in here, and as well as, of course, the Ricky Conlon fight. Every part of that from you captured, like he's got a little urgent bathroom break before it starts, the walkout, the moments with Rocky, the actual fight. And my favorite is he gets knocked down. It looks like he's going to be out, and he thinks about Apollo in the ring. He takes the deep breath in, he gets back up, and is going crazy. That always gets me so pumped up. And I really like that, and mirroring the first Rocky, he didn't win. I feel like that's the thing that's the thing about Rocky and Creed, that it's like, it's still all unrealistic to a certain degree, like pretty much all sports movies. But I like that they both shy away from and it's very Rocky to not do the like, and in his first ever big time fight, he wins and now he's number one. Like they got to do the same thing of like, okay, he established himself, but he's not a champion. He's not a winner. He's got to get there still. I think that is the indisputable right call.
For sure. And in Creed, in the chapter we did on Creed, kind of is a great example of why I had a great time doing the book, because I got to talk about all those things, why I love the movie and why it does this incredible job of rebooting the franchise and things like that. And then I also had to dive into why they called him Pretty Ricky Conlon. I couldn't quite figure it out. And because he's not like an overly super handsome guy. He's not an ugly guy by any means, just like a regular looking bloke. And I kind of did some math and I surmised that he was probably becoming a notable boxer at the same time as Pretty Ricky's Grind With Me was a big hit in Britain, and surmising that he started getting called Pretty Ricky Conlon because of Pretty Ricky's Grind With Me. And so that's kind of an example of the real hard-hitting journalism, investigative journalism I try to do on these movies.
I also thought your references were sick throughout, including like references or just other sports allusions. Explaining like why Ricky has to box against, Adonis, who at this point is a relative unknown outside of the Creed name. You explained that, he's going to the jail. He needs to get like one last payday to take care of his family, which is a pretty ridiculous conceit, but whatever. And you put boxing is great. Imagine if Patrick Mahomes and Aaron Rodgers arm wrestled on pay-per-view to make millions because Rodgers was heading to prison for 4 to 7. What a world. I guess this is another Wisconsin sports thing I missed earlier, but knowing everything about Aaron Rodgers, not that far-fetched. I think Mahomes would do it for him too. So I think if this happens in real life, I think you're going to go uber viral. I read that and I was like, I could actually imagine this. So maybe NFL is not that far off from boxing.
Since writing that, Aaron Rodgers has progressively only gotten crazier.
See, that aged a lot smoother for you than the Zion one, which I think is going to work fine, but a little less nervy for you there.
It did for sure.
I guess you just have to be like, don't let it happen before the book drops. Like,
just stay free.
Give me another year. That's awesome. Okay, I think. Oh, one last quick thing I wanted to go over. So I have not seen all 26. I assume a lot of people. I think some people will. I think they're largely classics, but a lot of people haven't seen 26 sports movies. I so far, outside of Teen Wolf, I'm gonna try and do it like a guide and watch the movies and then read it. I didn't want to spoil, even though, again, you can usually predict the ending, but whatever. Do you have a recommendation? Like, obviously, everyone should buy the book, first off. I think people will have seen a lot of the movies they can enjoy. Do you think, go ahead and read it? Because there are plot points, like the endings are usually discussed, but they're also sports movies, so you can kind of guess anyway. What do you think is the best approach? Like, use it as a guide and then read it, or just read it? It probably won't affect your enjoyment of the movie.
I think it's enjoyed more if you've seen the movie, for sure.
Yeah.
Because there are a lot of references and things you won't get. Like, certainly I think the visuals work for anything, but like I look at it too as like maybe like a recent viewing, because I had seen Slapshot. I didn't have like the appreciation for Slapshot that I should have. Rick was really big on Slapshot. We were always doing it. We need more hockey.
Yeah.
And when I rewatched Slapshot, I watched it like 3 or 4 times while I was writing it. I was like, oh, this is a classic. This movie is awesome. This movie still holds up really, really well. And so writing that section was one of the most fun because it almost felt like a fresh watch, like something new to me. And so that's where I would say, especially if you haven't seen something, like if I had read what I wrote in Slapshot and I hadn't seen Slapshot in a long time, I'd be like, I don't quite, maybe I don't get that reference, or I don't quite get it. So yeah, I would say if the movie is, if it's something you've seen a few times, you'll really enjoy the references. If you haven't seen it, if you've only seen it once a long time ago, it might not click the same way.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really fun now to kind of move forward. Like I know of it because my journalism professor loved the shower shoes analogy from Bull Durham. So I've heard that probably a million times. Shout out to Vince Vilak. But I've never seen fully Bull Durham. And I know that's your favorite. It's #1 in the book. So I plan to find a way to watch Bull Durham, and then I'm going to go through and read and enjoy the full section. I think it's going to be fun to do that, like going down the line. And sometimes I could even kind of feel what you're saying. Like I read Caddyshack, 'cause I've seen Caddyshack a couple of times, but it's been a while. And while I was reading, I was kind of like, I should rewatch Caddyshack. Like I almost think there's going to be that reverse effect too of like, it has, but I don't totally remember. Oh yeah, that happens too. Or like the Bill Murray grounds or Masters scene I had forgotten. I was like, oh man, I think that's really funny. I need to rewatch Caddyshack. So it's kind of almost, it goes both ways to a certain extent.
Yeah, it's always, Caddyshack's always worth a rewatch. It's the fun thing about Caddyshack is a lot of it is just like skits. Like it's not. Yeah,
you mentioned it's like barely
linear,
a movie.
It's not this linear plot. It's just like funny scenes stacked on top of each other.
Yeah, within the golf game at the end, but like there's not really that much tie-in between the rest. Which that was it Harold Ramis?
Yes, Harold Ramis
had just a crazy run, and the doc on him, I think it's on him, is really good about like Animal House and Lampoon and everything. Really, really good. But yeah, I think that's terrific. Anything else to share about the book? Hopefully, we haven't discussed it too much. I still think, regardless, we could read it verbatim. Being able to read it with the visuals and sit down with it is still going to be a different and superior experience. But anything else that you want to share or just that we missed talking about?
No, I mean, the visuals makes a great gift, available for pre-order if you're watching on YouTube.
Oh, look at that.
Looks like. Yeah, I got my little author copy here.
Nice.
But yeah, it's great gift, available for pre-order. Comes out on September 24th. So it'll be if you pre-order, it'll be in your hands early. If you reach out to me on social media and show me proof of pre-order, I will send you a signed like book plate and a Movies with Balls sticker. So that's a little perk there. But yeah, it's
at
for
Kyle
anyone.
Bandujo, Bandujo, and Kyle the typical way. Wherever, mostly Twitter, IG as well.
Mostly Twitter. I'm on IG a little. IG is more. I've been using it to promote the book lately, but IG is more like pictures of food.
Yeah. Well, so, I like food, so
yeah. So you can reach me. You can reach me wherever. But it's if you like movies, or if you have family members who like movies, if you need a go-to gift for like your grandpa, your dad, your uncles, anything, make it your go-to gift.
100%. Holiday is definitely coming up, so that's a great shout right there. Make sure to get your pre-order in. Check out local bookstores. Pick up a copy. Pick up 2 copies. Might as well. Support. Great work. Thank you, Kyle, for taking the time to come on. We really appreciate it. And Bucks fans, next week we're back nitty gritty. Rohan and I, we've discussed doing a mailbag. We'll probably take questions on Twitter and also in our Discord. Discord usually gets priority. Check out gspn.info. We've got the link in our About page on the Substack homepage right now. If you have any trouble getting in, let me know. I can assist there as well. But yeah, make sure to subscribe. Make sure to subscribe to Big Screen Sports as well for more great sports movie content from Kyle. That's always a great listen over on wherever you listen to this podcast. Follow him on social. Get the book. That's the most important thing. Listen and subscribe to this podcast as well if you haven't already, or if this is your first time. Thanks for listening, Pod Random, and we'll talk to you next time.